Okay, hello everyone, this is Piyush. So today it is day 6 for daily answer writing program for history optional, right? And what is the question of today? Today's question is the foreign accounts provide crucial external perspectives on ancient Indian society, polity and economy. Critically evaluate the importance of these foreign accounts as source of reconstructing ancient Indian history. What are the potential biases and limitations of relying on these sources? Now, this is the question. Now, it is very clear that this particular question is basically talking about the foreign accounts, right? So, in the introduction, what exactly you are supposed to write? In the introduction, you have to write that what are the various foreign accounts which are helping us in the reconstruction of ancient Indian history. Now, in the foreign accounts, we'll be talking about undoubtedly the Greek and Latin accounts. Then it comes to the Chinese accounts. Then it comes to Sri Lankan accounts. And then you can also write about the Nepali accounts and the Tibetan accounts, right? So you can even use certain examples also. Okay, these are the various examples of all these different accounts that we have been discussing. Now that is the introduction. Now after the introduction, this particular question should be divided into 3 parts basically. Now what are these 3 parts of the question? The first part of the question, which is talking about basically it is providing us information on society, polity and economy. That is the first part. So that is going to become the first part of your question, and there you are going to provide basically whatsoever information it had been providing on various dimensions which are being given here. So when it comes to the society, so undoubtedly they have been providing us various information on society. So you can talk about some Greek sources, specifically when it comes to Megasthenes Indica. Then it comes to the foreign travelers coming from China, the Buddhist travelers coming from China, that is Wensang and Faiyan and Wensang. They were also giving us some information on society. And then certain texts which were developed in Sri Lanka, such as Divyavadan, Mahavadan and so on, Deepavansa, Mahavansa, specifically Deepavansa and Mahavansa. So they are also providing us the information on various aspects of society. So you can give 1 or 2 examples also, the way they are talking about the caste system, they are talking about Varna system, they are even talking about the status of women in the society, status of Sudras in the society. So these are certain information that you can use in order to show the social information. And then it comes to political information. So they are coming into the period in the period of various rulers, such as when when Megasthenes is coming. At that point of time, you can find Chandragupta Maurya was there. So they are providing us information on basically the expansion of the state, the policy of the state, the welfaristic policies of the state. In the same way, when some Chinese travelers were coming, they are also providing information, such as when Wensang is here in India, he had been providing so much information on the political situation of India under Harsa, during that period of time. In the same way, we can talk about Deepavansa and Divyavadan. They have been providing information on Asoka's period. So this is how they are even providing information on the political part. And then it comes to the economic part, and frankly speaking, these texts are best to find the economic information, because apart from the regular text what we have been discussing, when it comes to certain texts such as Pliny's Natural Historica, then it comes to Periplus of Erythraean Sea, which was written by an anonymous writer, and then we can talk about even the Ptolemy's Geography. These are certain texts which have been precisely covering the economic relationship, or let's say trade relationship, specifically between the Western world and India at that point of time, and they have been providing information on basically the trade commodities, the players in the trade, and in fact what sort of institutions, what were the institutions which were handling this trade. So all these information they have been categorically providing. So that's how in one part will be writing that okay, this is this is something, or these are the information that we have been finding from these foreign accounts. Then it comes to the second part, and there you have to discuss about basically the specifications. So how come these sources are becoming beautiful? So basically you have to give certain points, and by that you have to prove how come they had been providing information which are helping in the reconstruction of ancient Indian history. Such as the best, the first and the most important point is the supplementing indigenous sources. On various occasions, you'll find that the indigenous sources are silent. They are not revealing information on several things. where these foreign accounts are quite helpful. The best example of this would be the Mauryan rulers, such as specifically we can talk about Chandragupta Maurya and Bindusar, Chandragupta Maurya and Bindusar, because most of the Indian sources are silent on them, or if any Indian source or sources are talking about it, they are very late sources, and that's how we are incapable to know any contemporary source which are talking about them. That's why the history of these people were mostly unknown to us. But then with the help of these foreign accounts, specifically the Greek accounts, the way they have dealt with Sendrakotas, Endrakotas or Amitrochates, now that's how we constructed the history of these rulers. And that's how we can say they were helping us in giving information for those things which were somehow missing in Indian sources. The second important thing, that they are the neutral observations. Like whenever any Indian writing you are talking about, ultimately they have been giving some sort of biased information. On the other hand, we can say that the Greek and the Chinese accounts precisely, they are more neutral as compared to the Indian sources. That's another beauty that could be discussed. Okay, then we can talk about that somehow their observation was more on the practical things being followed in the society. So they are not covering everything with a Brahminical perspective. So we can say they are somehow dealing more with the materialistic life of the people at that point of time, whether the Indian sources are more or less silent on these aspects. And that's how we can discuss about certain beauties of these accounts and beauties of these accounts. And yes, one more point can be included here, the way they have been providing information basically on the economic relationship between, or the trade relationship between India and West, right, and the cultural relationship between China and India, then Sri Lanka and India, or the Nepal's engagement in basically when it comes to Buddhism. So these are certain things which we can come across only with the help of these sources. So that's how we can say they are quite helpful, quite helpful in reconstructing the ancient India. But then in the third part of the question, what is being asked? Now they have been asking for the limitations, right? So when it comes to limitations, so we can talk about first an important topic is, or important point is, that these are mostly based on hearsay. Specifically when it comes to the Greek and the Latin sources, except Megasthenes and some other fellows like Nearchus, nobody ever visited India. Megasthenes was the only one who spent 3.5 years in India, and that's how his writings were more or less based on certain observation, but rest of the writings were basically rest of the writings were basically they were based on hearsay. In fact, if we'll talk about Megasthenes' writing of Indica, now this book itself was very much based on the hearsay, because this person, being an ambassador, had never access to the common society or the normal society. That's why he was also collecting information from the various other sources, and then he had been revealing them or telling somebody other as the very authentic source for India, which is incorrect, correct? So that's the reason, because of what he had been providing so many wrong information for India. So hearsay remains one of the most important problem. The second thing we can say, that religious biases. Now most of the Chinese travelers and even the Sri Lankan and the Sri Lankan Tibetan text, to a certain extent even the text from Nepal, they were mostly Buddhist. And since they were Buddhist, and that's how their main focus remains on Buddhism. The third important point that you can talk about is basically about sometimes providing the false information. And why false information? Because there is a very simple thing. Most of the time these authors have been making the making the cultural connections, or the cultural comparison, or the societal comparison. So they were making these kind of comparisons, and when they have been making these kind of comparisons, so they are focusing on some very limited parts. That remains one of the problematic thing, and that's how we can consider even this also as as problem. Then we can say their cultural biases or their ethnocentric views are also one problematic thing. How ethnocentric? Because they always try to understand the Indian society of that point of time from their cultural perspectives, and that was undoubtedly creating problem. The way Megasthenes is providing information that there were 7 castes in India, which is undoubtedly incorrect, and that's how we can say this remains a sort of problematic thing. One more important lacuna or the drawback that we can talk about is about the selective reporting. So they are not interested in every domain of society because they were not creating something in the name of history, and that's how only the things which were interesting, which they found interesting, they had been picking the content from there, and that's how this also remain a problem. So that's how there are so many problems that we can discuss about, and these problems somehow are questioning over the capacity of these foreign texts as a source of Indian history. And that's why when you'll be going to the conclusion by quoting certain scholars, you have to give the conclusion, such as A.L. Bossum is saying that undoubtedly they are very important, but everybody or historians need to be very critical to these sources, because you can't take it as it is. In the same way, even the Rumila Thapar is saying that if you juxtapose it with the indigenous sources, then only you will be able to use them properly, and that's how the way we have been using the Asokan inscriptions, or we have been juxtaposing Asokan inscriptions with Arthashastra and Indica, and that's how we try to reach to the accurate history. You can quote another scholar called as Thomas Trotman, and Trotman is talking about basically the cross-cultural interaction, and he talks about that this remain one of the biases, and that's how in the conclusion we'll be writing they cannot be totally trustworthy. Rather, if we juxtapose it with the other sources, in that case we'll be able to somehow extract the right history from the Greek sources or the foreign accounts, not Greek sources, the foreign accounts. That's how you're going to frame this answer. Thank you very much.